everyone! In today's demo, you're going to learn how to utilize some basic features and functions of Photoshop as you create your own photo collage. So in this demo, what you'll notice is that you're going to be utilizing pre-selected photos, but you can choose which of these photos you'd like to use in your collage. You must use a minimum of 3. So right now I have a couple sample images already pre-opened. One of the things that you'll notice is that if you have a lot of tabs open, you may not be able to see them all. So using these little arrow keys, you can see all of your different tabs that are open. So to start your collage, what you're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. I'm not going to save it. I'm going to start a new document. Go to File, New, and then over here you want to make sure you select 8 inches by 8 inches. So we're going to be working in a square format. Color mode is RGB, and that's fine. And we want our resolution to be 300. So it's a good habit to be in to stick with a resolution of 300 unless you need to do something specific for web purposes where we would reduce that size. Go ahead and click Create, and there you go. So this is essentially your canvas or your background space. This negative space in the outer edges is basically indicating where your canvas is and where it is not. If you want to zoom, for instance, you can use the keyboard functions of Control plus to zoom in and Control minus to zoom out. So as you can see, depending on how far I zoom, I can really get a good idea of zooming in for details and then zooming out to get a perspective of the entire canvas space. So the first thing that you will want to do is you will want to grab each of your images that you want to use, and you can do that by clicking Control A. So what this does is that it will select all of your entire image. So that's essentially what you're doing, is select all. And you should see these little marching, I like to call them marching ants or little dots that are moving around your edge. So that means this whole area is selected. Select Control C. And then in my final canvas space, I'm going to select Control V. There I have pasted my image. It'll automatically paste in the center. So right now I'm utilizing the Move key. One of the nice features of Photoshop is it will often tell you what each of these different keys do and give you an example. Okay, so here in the Move tool, I can move this anywhere I like. You'll notice that these little lines pop up. So these are your guidelines. The reason why they are there is to help guide your placement, so that way as you're working on your collage, you can create even spacing. Now let's say I didn't want to use this entire image. Maybe I want to crop some of it. So what I can do is I can actually go back to my original image. I can use the crop tool right away if I know how I want to crop it. Let's say I only really want to focus in and utilize more of the lens itself. And so I just use the cropping tool, and when I'm happy with it, I click Enter. I can do the same thing, Control A, Control C, and then Control V to paste. That is one way I can crop an image. Now let's say I want to crop my image from inside the same canvas. So I'm going to go ahead. You'll notice that with each of these photos, they're on different layers. So one of the things that's really confusing with Photoshop is that sometimes you can go, I want to move this and not move this. So in order to make sure that you're not moving or adjusting something you don't want to, I highly recommend getting the habit of getting used to selecting whichever layer you want to work on. If there's a layer that you want to go ahead and lock, you can select that layer and hit this little lock key. That lock key means I now can't move this layer. No matter how hard I try, I'm not going to be able to do anything with that layer. All right, so let's say I want to do a similar cropping, but I want to do it with the image that's already in this space. So one of the ways I can do that is I can use this rectangular marquee tool. So the marquee tool is basically like a selection tool. So it lets me select whatever it is that I want, okay? Then I can make sure this layer is selected, so it wasn't selected, so make sure that's highlighted, Control C, Control V, and if I hide the layer underneath, now it has been cropped. And when I want to delete a layer, like let's say I'm done with this layer now, click, hold it down, and hover it over my trash can and release. All right, so now I have one image pasted in here. I think I'm going to move it down, possibly. So one of the issues that I see with this image is I really want it to take up a little bit more space, and because it's white, I think I'm going to change the color of my background. That way this image will stand out a little bit more clearly. All right, so in order to change or resize an image, it's really simple. You use Control T, which is transform. As you can see, I can use the little indicators on the side. If you hold down the Shift key, what that will do is it will distort your image, as you see here. If you make a mistake, super easy. Control Z is essentially your undo button. All right, so let's say I wanted to color the background. How do I do that? I'm going to select on the background, but you'll notice it has that little lock on it. In order to unlock my background, I'm going to double click, and now it's layer 0, which is fine. I want to come over here to my simple paint bucket, and I'm going to choose probably a light gray. That looks good. All right, so now you can really see these sections and divisions between my different images. So now I'm going to come back to this image here, and I'm going to resize it a little bit. Oops. To fit into the space better, because I want smaller margins. All right. And then this image here, I'm going to make sure it's nice and centered. And then I have some nice even spacing. I think I'm even going to resize it just a hair. Make it a little bigger. Make sure it's centered. All right, I'm going to take this image. Now I'm going to use those guidelines. As you can see, I'm lining it up with this image edge to make that clear. And there you go. So this is my very simple collage. The last thing that I want you to try to do is add some text. So your text could be as simple as adding your name. So this is, you want to use the horizontal type tool, which is pretty much what we're going to be using for most of our stuff. I'm going to go ahead and draw a text box. You can also simply click and you can type in text right away. My text is a little too big to actually show up here. So let's see, make this bigger. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete. So one of the things you want to look for that you can tell that you still have text is this little bottom that stops moving around. Is at the very bottom of this corner, you notice that the square is a little different. So over here it's an open square, and over here the square actually has broken up inside of it, divided twice. So that actually is kind of a visual indicator. So now you see the square has changed. It's a very subtle change. That there is no more extra text. So now my text box is empty, and now I can type something in here. So Photoshop 101. So I think I'm just going to write Photoshop 101, change my color, probably just to white, keep it simple. I also want to change my size so it's smaller and a little bigger. Go ahead and reduce this size, and I want to center my text. Oops. Alright, let me click on Move Tool. So the Move Tool tends to be your basic tool that really kind of helps reset where you're at. The last thing that you often want to do with text is, if you ever want to change anything with your text, you can always click on your text layer and make sure you click text and make sure you highlight the text directly, or else it'll make a new text box. So now that my collage is finished, the last thing I want to do is I want to save it. So I have all of these layers. What do I do with all of these layers? And I have a few that I'm not using. I can either delete them or I can ignore them. So the last thing you want to do is make sure that you first save your work. So I'm going to save my work to my Google Drive. So make sure you save it in your Google Drive as a Photoshop file. Let's say Photoshop 101 collage, and make sure this is in your files. So I would make sure that you find under Google Drive, My Drive, find whatever photography folder that you created for yourself, and then make a new folder. You can name it, Photoshop 101. For the purpose of this, I'm going to say demo, because that is what I'm doing. I'm going to save this in here. Save. All right. And then what I want to do is I want to flatten my image so I can then save it as a PNG file or a JPEG. A PNG file or a JPEG are pretty much standard when it comes to an actual image that you will want to print. So in order to make it a JPEG, I need to make sure it doesn't have all of these layers. So I want to go to is Layer, and I'm going to use this little arrow key to get all the way down to the bottom where it says Flatten Image. So I'm going to click Flatten Image, discard hidden layers. Yes, because I'm not using them. Press OK. So now it's just one layer. So now what I want to do is I want to click Save As. This is really important that you click Save As so you aren't overwriting your Photoshop file. If you override or click Save on this file, that means that you won't have those layers to go back and edit in case you need to do that with a later project. So down here, as you can see, there's a lot of different options for saving. You'll notice there's several options for JPEG. Please just make sure that you pick simple JPEG, not JPEG 2000 or JPEG stereo, but simple JPEG. Make sure that is selected, and you can go ahead and click Save. Quality, you usually want to keep it at maximum quality and click OK. All right, so this concludes this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching.